Event. My name's Barton Green from 3plus, and I'll be sharing the MC duties today with Channel 9 news presenter and journalist John Upton. I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Yagara and Turrbal people, the traditional owners of the land upon which we gather, and elders past, present and emerging. In addition to our 6 guest speakers, who I'll introduce shortly, I'd also like to acknowledge a couple of other special guests here today. We have Shadow Minister for the Arts, Dr. Christian Rowan, and the Chair of the Museum of Brisbane and former Brisbane Lord Mayor, Sally Ann Atkinson AO. I'd also like to acknowledge across Queensland all of those who are suffering with the bushfires. I'm sure most of us in the room have family and friends who are being affected, and our thoughts are with them today. In fact, Melissa Downs from Channel 9 was going to be our MC today, and Melissa's been sent up to the Sunshine Coast for duty, and Jono has very kindly agreed to step in at short notice for that. And we've had a couple of other journos who were scheduled to be here today who've also been sent off to cover the bushfires. So our thoughts are with all of those. While we have this important event today, there's a big issue happening across Queensland that I'm sure we're all thinking about. We do have a very full agenda today, so we will be serving and clearing meals during this introduction and through the Q&As later on, and we invite you to please continue eating while those sessions are underway, because we have quite a lot of questions to get through on a decent-sized panel today. The Queensland Media Club is the official political business and media forum of the Queensland Parliament Media Gallery and the Media Entertainment and Arts Alliance. The Queensland Parliament Media Gallery uses proceeds from these events to support new journalists as well as charitable causes. The Media Entertainment and Arts Alliance uses its share of the proceeds to support professional development and welfare activities for its members. We are able to present these events each year only through the support of our sponsors, and I'd like to introduce them to you. Our naming rights partners for 1920 are Brisbane Airport Corporation, the operator of Brisbane Airport, the multi-award-winning premier gateway to Queensland, welcoming more than 23 million passengers a year. Dial Before You Dig, a national referral service for information on the location of utilities underground assets anywhere in Australia, and Griffith University, created to be a different kind of university, challenging conventions, creating bold new trends and pioneering solutions. Ranking in the top 2% of universities worldwide, its future-focused degrees are developed in consultation with industry, based on cutting-edge research and taught by Australia's most awarded teachers. Would you please thank our naming rights sponsors? Our 2019-20 season partner is Arrow Energy, an integrated CSG company working to meet domestic and international demand for cleaner energy. Would you please thank Arrow Energy? Our club partners include New Hope Group, a majority Australian-owned, Queensland-based, diversified energy company with business interests and operations spanning coal mining, agriculture, exploration, port operation, oil and innovative technologies. Telstra, whose purpose is to build a connected future so everyone can thrive. With a long and proud history of contributing to Queensland's economic and social development, Telstra is committed to staying close to its customers and providing them with the best experience, delivering the best tech on the best network. Shell QGC, one of Australia's leading natural gas producers, focused on developing Queensland's world-class onshore gas reserves. And the Queensland Futures Institute, a unique partnership of academic, business, community and social services, government, industry and research organisations that seek faster economic and social growth through collaborative public policy reform. Would you please thank all of our club partners? Our venue partner, as always, is the wonderful Brisbane Convention and Exhibition Centre, named the world's best convention centre and one of Queensland's great success stories. The venue brings unmatched capability and expertise to deliver a next-level experience in dining and delivering outstanding events, and has secured more than 1,480 events for the BCEC through to 2029. And the managers of the Queensland Media Club, 3plus, the specialists in risk and reputation management and strategic communications. Would you please thank our venue partner and our managers? We always welcome new partners at the Media Club. If any of your companies are interested in joining us, please catch up with one of the Media Club team after the event. I'd now like to introduce our project and our speakers. Jono will reintroduce our guest speakers once they take the stage after lunch, and I'd like you to please make them welcome at that time. And we need the right slide pack, please. That's the one, thank you. This event was prompted by a view that the role of arts and culture in our new world city is neither well understood nor appreciated. This is as true for the economic contribution that arts and culture make to the city and the state as it is to their essential part in the community's fabric. So we invited the 5 state companies and QPAC, surprisingly speaking together for the first time today, as it turns out, to explore the challenges and opportunities for arts and culture. So let me introduce them to you. Queensland Ballet. Founded in 1960, Queensland Ballet is the state's premier ballet company and one of only 3 full-time professional classic ballet companies in Australia. Queensland Ballet presents more than 100 performances each year and is represented today by the company's 5th Artistic Director and 1st Curatorial Artistic Director, Lee Schwinn Singh. Please welcome Lee. Queensland Theatre was established in 1970 and is the state's flagship professional theatre company and the 3rd largest in Australia. Queensland Theatre presents more than 200 theatre shows each season, and its Executive Director, Amanda Jolly, is representing the company today. Please welcome Amanda. Queensland Performing Arts Centre, QPAC, was opened by the Duke of Kent in 1985 and is Queensland's premier performance venue, each year hosting productions by most of our other guests here on the panel. QPAC welcomes more than 1.3 million visitors and hosts more than 1,200 performances annually, and we welcome Chief Executive John Kotzas today. Please put your hands together for John. Opera Queensland. Queensland, it's our state's major creator of opera and music and was founded in 1981. The company delivers more than 20 performances each year, including 3 main stage productions annually at QPAC. It is represented today by Artistic Director and CEO Patrick Nolan, and that's not him on the screen, by the way. Queensland Art Gallery, Gallery of Modern Art. Founded way back in 1895 as the Queensland National Art Gallery. Today, Queensland Art Gallery shares its Kurilpa Point site with the Gallery of Modern Art, which opened in 2006. Quagoma Director Chris Saines is here today to represent these 2 art museums that hold a collection of more than 17,000 works and in the past year have hosted more than 1.4 million visitors. Please make Chris welcome. Queensland Symphony Orchestra played its first concert in March 1947 and is Queensland's only professional symphony orchestra. The QSO presents almost 200 performances each year to a direct audience of more than 200,000 and has an impressive streaming, digital and broadcast engagement with more than 1.8 million people. It is represented today by Chief Executive Craig Whitehead. Please make Craig welcome. Now, today's more than facts and figures about money, but it is important to present some facts and figures to you, just to put some context around the importance of these institutions. And we should acknowledge in the room today, as well as Museum of Brisbane, we have many other arts and cultural institutions here whose importance to the community is hopefully well understood. So I want to put some economic facts and figures around the impact that these great institutions have. Together, they present more than 1,900 performances or exhibitions each year. They host more than 3 million attendees in Brisbane. They employ more than 1,000 full-time staff and 2,300 artists and performers. They present more than 35 regional and interstate tours every year, and they host almost 220,000 attendees at those performances and exhibitions. Altogether, these activities represent more than $290 million in annual economic value to the city and state. Now, even the people who are speaking today haven't seen all these figures collated. It's the first time that that's been done. And I think when you look at that number, it's an incredible impact positively on our city and our state, just from its economic value. So these figures go some way to explaining the true value of arts and culture. After lunch, our guests will tell you more of that story. We invite those of you on Twitter to join the conversation today by using the hashtag ArtsFuture. Jono will be back shortly to invite our guests to the stage for the Q&A session. Please enjoy your lunch. See you after lunch.
Good afternoon and welcome to our event this afternoon. I'd like to also echo the thoughts of that Barton mentioned before. Of course, not only acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered, but also paying some respects and thoughts to those people who are battling the terrible bushfires across our state and down in New South Wales as well. Melissa Downs, Channel 9 presenter, does apologise personally. She asked me to pass that on to you, that she's not here. I definitely have the better gig of the day rather than being out there in the bushfire zone. So. For those who don't know me, Jonathan Upton, one of the presenters and reporters up at Channel 9. My great pleasure to be here today for this gathering. And I have a little bit of history in the arts. I'm a great supporter of it. Former thespian as a kid. I played clarinet. My father was an artist, so I would also add that anyone who sits in front of an auto cue and reads is a performer. So please accept. I have to also acknowledge that I did get given this at the last minute, so if I refer to my notes from time to time, that is why. Can I please reintroduce our guests, ladies and gentlemen, from your left to right, from the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, Chief Executive Craig Whitehead. Thanks, Craig. From Queensland Theatre, Executive Director Amanda Jolly. From Queensland Ballet, Artistic Director Lee Schwing-Sing. From Queensland Art Gallery, Gallery of Modern Art, Director Chris Saines. Thanks, Chris. From Queensland Performing Arts Centre, Chief Executive John Kotzas. And from Queensland Opera, Artistic Director and CEO Patrick Nolan. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please once again welcome our guests. So the format for today, we'll have some questions. We'll get responses from each of our guests, and we'll also have some that are individually targeted to their specific fields. But look, to kick us off, everyone, Brisbane promotes itself as a new world city. The Committee for Brisbane has a vision for Greater Brisbane as being the most livable city in the world. So to kick us off, I'd like to ask each and every one of you, what role should arts and culture play in those ambitions for our city and our region? And how important really is the arts and culture scene to society? Is it just, some people would argue, nice to have, or is it really more than that? To kick us off, how about you, Lee?
Thanks, Jono. Hi, everyone. Look, I think arts is a very vital, very important part of our society, not just nice to have. I think arts brings people together, connecting people, and it's a vital part of the social fabric in cohesiveness, because arts does not have walls or boundaries. And also, I think arts challenges tend to lead the way because of its creativity of artists. And artists as known to be dreamers. They dream big, and sometimes people can think they're eccentric or crazy, but that's why they are dreamers. And we work with a lot of dreamers. Sometimes they are hard to manage. But being said that, they are quite courageous because their creativity, and sometimes they come up with crazy ideas. But those crazy ideas sometimes turn out to be so profound, so thought-provoking, and it could set certain people offside. But I think that's what the role of the arts should precisely play in our society.
I think we're going to have a fairly uniform response to this question, but let's go to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hello, everybody. I really think the arts are an essential part of building the identity and the character of a city. So if you think about where you're travelling in the world, I think the arts will give you a real sense of what that city is really like, what the people that live there value, what that society is like. And so I think in an era of increased globalisation, it'll be really those local stories and that local character that is going to make the difference. People are not really interested in generic things anymore. So when I think about us next year presenting Trent Dalton's novel Boy Swallows Universe as a play, that's going to be a quintessential Brisbane story. That's a story that's not going to come from anywhere else. So I really think that it's essential that the arts really present the real flavour and feeling of a city. And I would agree absolutely with Lee about the arts bringing people together and giving us a chance to really reflect on the society in which we live, the stories that we tell. And I think it's really important too that the arts help us keep remembering those stories, universal stories about humanity, things that have happened, because hopefully that's the way that we might stop repeating a lot of mistakes. So I think it's essential, not just a nice to have.
Patrick, let's bring in you. What are your thoughts?
This could get quite tedious. we are, I think, all going to agree. I absolutely endorse everything that has been said already about the way in which the arts are able to give identity to a city and to bring us closer to each other as a people, in terms of the way it can, it allows us to live with our differences and understand our differences and see each other for who we are through the arts. I think the other thing that's really important for me is that nothing else, no other form can speak through time the way the arts do. So when I'm sure we have all had the experience of hearing a song and being taken back to the time when we first heard that song, or remembering a special moment. And really, the arts are able to do that, whether it's through literature or through live performance. There's nothing else that can actually connect us to a sense of who we are, and who we were once, and also who we might be. And I think that capacity to allow us to imagine who we might be, but also to give us a sense of who we are, is really, really important, both personally, but also as a society.
Chris, I heard you agreeing with that.
Well, I had a suspicion we'd all be in violent agreement over this, so I thought I'd tip it on its head a bit and put us into the space of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first need is shelter and sustenance. The broader second-tier needs are psychological needs, the need to belong, the need to have empathy with others. And the fourth one is, or the third one rather, is about self-actualisation and fulfilment. And ultimately, I think that's what the arts give us more than they give us anything else. They do. Very few people can, in a sense, live off the arts, but we can't, I believe, if we're going to lead that full and flourishing life that Aristotle and Plato invoked for us to lead, we can't achieve that without the arts, because it takes us to places that the ordinary business of life will never get us to. And it's interesting that this question also talked about livability, and so we're always, I know if you work for a council, you look hard at that global livability index. I think in the recent issue of Monologue, we're at number 23. Now, apart from the good things at the airport and the good things elsewhere in terms of infrastructure projects, major sponsor plug, what I think you see in that is you read down, and the first cultural moment that's identified in the city was the 9th iteration of the APT. Now, I can tell you that was a good moment at my desk when I saw that. But to me, it's not about what a Big Mac costs. It's not about how quickly my commute is. It is about all the things that a city offers to me that makes it a more civil society in which to live, and just simply a better place to be with my friends and family. And that's what I think the arts lend to a city more than anything else.
Craig, Patrick made a really good point about music and how we all remember that song. Speak us through your perspective on this.
Yeah, look, for me, I'm reminded when I first saw this question, I was reminded of a quote that is assigned to Winston Churchill during the Second World War, when his cabinet came to him and asked him to cut arts funding in order to support the war effort, and he just turned to them and looked at them and said, "Then why are we fighting?" So for me, it really is a sense of it is beyond the normal, and we need to make sure that we continue to focus not only on the economic drivers, but also the pure vitality of the art forms and how they make us feel. But also even on a pragmatic sense, from a world city perspective. If you look around the world, and I can't think of a great world city that doesn't have a great arts and cultural hub or a heart. And that's no coincidence. Great cities, great world cities, have great arts and cultural at the centre of their being. And if we are going to compete internationally, let's face it, we're not competing with Sydney and Melbourne, we're competing internationally. for the best and the brightest, to retain the best and the brightest, and to attract the best and the brightest. And the only way we're going to be able to do that, our beaches and football codes that the internationals don't understand are only going to take us so far. It's going to be about what they do on a Friday and Saturday night, how connected they feel to this new community in which they call home. And the only way to do that is through arts and culture.
And John, you're not going to disagree, are you?
No, Jonathan, and good afternoon, everyone. If we accept that culture is the glue that binds us together, then arts is a very important strand of that culture. And, you know, similar people don't make for a good city. What we need is diversity. And what the arts offers us, and you can hear it amongst us all here, is that the arts offers us the opportunity to develop diversity and to strengthen that diversity. And it's in the diversity that we find our strength.
Okay, so we've brought up a few themes throughout that introductory speeches, so thanks very much for that, and we'll delve into some of them now. Lee, I want to start with you. My notes say here, and I'll quote this because I don't want to be the one accused of saying it, but over its history, Brisbane suffered a cultural cringe and didn't consider it had an arts and culture sector worthy of national or international attention. Look, in your experience, and your travel around Australia and, of course, overseas, how would you rate the quality of Brisbane's arts and culture scene? I suppose our reputation, not only nationally, but also around the world.
I think with my personal experiences, I think we have a very vibrant arts and culture in Brisbane. I especially felt, I've been here for 7 years now, I especially felt the speed and velocity of development of the arts and culture sector in the last 7 years since I've been here is truly phenomenal. And I truly felt we have passed that tipping point, and that speed of involvement is actually getting faster all the time. And I think that, you know, when I was, overseas, you go to New York and London, all that, there are fantastic cities, as Chris said, these, you know, global cities, people gravitate towards it, because part of the reason is not really the buildings per se, it's not the weather per se, it's not they have Hudson River or whatever, but it's really the culture, really the arts. But I think we are, Brisbane now and Queensland really have come a long way. But I think one thing I do want to point out, I think we sometimes belittle ourselves. We almost need to grow up. We need to mature. We need to be more confident, not arrogance, but we need to be more confident of what we have, what we are capable of delivering together. Because we do have a fantastic, really wonderful group of cultural and arts institutions delivering fabulous shows and exhibitions and all that. But sometimes we talk ourselves down. We almost feel sorry for ourselves. And I think we have to grow up.
I'm hearing someone agree beside me.
I can only stretch that out. That's absolutely true. We should stop apologising and start being proud of what we've created as an arts unit in this city. And that creation has taken several decades. I remember I lived and worked here in the early 80s into the mid-90s, and I moved up from Victoria. And as a consequence, I was kind of warned on the way out the door that I was setting my cultural clock back. And I don't think I was, or I didn't think I was. I went up with some sense of aspiration and ambition. But I kind of got here and I thought, yeah, it's kind of a big rocky. But it's better than that. And it's grown so fast. And I think for us, the marker has been sort of, there was pre-APT and then there was post-APT. And then there was QAG and then there was GOMA. And they're our kind of, I suppose, programmatic and built markers. But inside of those two buildings, the kind of programming we do today is nothing like the kind of fly-in, fly-out arts centres of Europe and America programming, which we did a great deal of in the 80s in particular. The way to celebrate, I remember Expo 88 and the big celebrations around the bicentenary, pretty much we did everything but show Australian art. You know, it was almost the second cousin. We did do a big show called Creating Australia, but it didn't create the ripples of, you know, the various international blockbusters that we stacked up against it. So I think that Brisbane's got a huge amount to be proud of. I think one of the really distinctive attributes of this city is we're very, very collegial. We all work really well together. When I first arrived in Brisbane, back in Brisbane in 2013, the first thing Brisbane Marketing did was set me up at a lunch over at the Hilton, obviously good budgets, and we had about 30 people around the table, and they were all the arts sector, and they were people like Rachel and Julianne Elro, and all of a sudden I thought, this is a really joined up place, and I think that sense has only grown in the intervening years I've been back here.
John, I want to bring you back in. Of course, QPAC is Queensland's premier venue. Your stats are amazing. 1,300 performances, 1.5 million visitors a year. You would obviously see and hear a lot of feedback from your supporters. What do they think of Brisbane's arts and culture scene and the facilities as well that we have here?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'd have to agree with Lee and Chris. I've worked here, like many of you, for a long time. We've always been there. We've always been on the front edge. I think Lee's right. I think we have to be a lot more proud of what we achieve and a lot less concerned about what others think. But the maturity that we've seen in the last 10 years has been extraordinary. And what we've seen in Brisbane is a growth in an urbaneness and a growth in a metropolitanness where we are much more conscious and connected with the rest of the world, and we have a comparison by which we can measure ourselves. And I think the three things that probably challenge me the most at the moment is, how do we connect with the rest of Queensland? How do we stay vital and continue to grow? And how do we grow our small to medium sector, which actually is a very vital and important part of the ecology? And if there's one message I want to leave behind today on this point, it's not just about Brisbane, it's about growing the ecology throughout the state and throughout the country so that we feed off each other. And that's the most important thing that we can do. Brisbane is an important part of a national network. And we need to hold our heads proud and say the connectedness that we have nationally and internationally is something that we need to build on.
You make some very good points. It's a very competitive space, though, isn't it, as far as getting any productions or anything involved in the arts and culture. What are your thoughts? Do we need, Amanda, to have a point of difference? Do we need something extra?
Yes, and look, just to go back and pick up on something that John was saying, to me it's not so much about the competition, it's about the collaboration. I think that is really something that the arts can teach everybody about, the power of collaboration. So at the theatre company, when we're looking at the season, we'll be looking at what's great for Brisbane, what's great for Queensland, but we'll also be looking nationally. So we will be doing many productions that we perform every year with the other major theatre companies in all the other capital cities. We go to those other festivals. So many times we'll be taking a Brisbane story, developing it here, and then taking it out to those other states. Or even, partnering with a small to medium company like Dead Puppet Society, taking their show to the Natural History Museum in London, the Wider Earth, about Charles Darwin. So it's very much about that collaboration and getting those stories out there. And I think our unique selling proposition is just that. It is the cultural production of our people, and it's our stories. So I think, that is a particular space to work in. And I think Queensland is also the only state with two distinct Indigenous cultures, Torres Strait Island and Aboriginal. So every year we'll be producing work like that, and the festivals are very keen. My Name is Jimmy or City of Gold, they've gone off to other cities because there's a huge appetite for that kind of work in the rest of Australia. So I think it's that. I think it's believing in our own stories, developing them, and then sharing them with the rest of Australia. So I think it's that more than competition. Thank you.
Craig, Amanda mentioned a unique selling proposition. Do you think we need one?
Look, I guess we do. You always need to differentiate your product in the marketplace. But for us, the marketplace that we focus on is much more of a global marketplace than it is interstate or local. If you like, the kind of a driver that we have that I keep talking to my team about is that we need to think global but act local. So in terms of, we're much more interested in looking at what the great orchestras in the US and Europe are doing and what can we learn from that and how do we challenge ourselves because we have the Queensland Symphony Orchestra is perhaps the best kept secret in Queensland and Australia. It's an extraordinary world-class ensemble. So how do we actually get that message out, and how do we push that forward so we don't feel like we're competing with Sydney and Melbourne? The challenge for us is how do we push ourselves further beyond that, but also how do we make sure that we continue to be accessible and relevant to the people of Queensland? And I think that is the unique component of the marketplace in which we operate, and John touched on it, is that we're the most decentralised state in Australia, so we have more people living outside of Brisbane than we do in. So how do we connect with those communities, and how do we connect with those young artists coming through and provide pathways for them into either as audience members or as artists to join us on that journey to being a global superpower, if you like.
We could have our first disagreement of the afternoon because, Patrick, I reckon Opera Queensland's probably the best kept secret.
Oh, thank you very much. I would have to agree. But yeah, picking up on both what Amanda and Craig have just said, I mean, collaboration, I think, is one of the great features of the city. I've only lived in Brisbane for the last couple of years, and the thing that I find really remarkable about Brisbane and the art scene here is that people, they want to work with each other. They're interested in what the other companies are doing, and there's a real sense of a shared identity that we are doing this together. I mean, obviously, I can't create my work without the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, and so that's kind of immediate. And yes, you are one of the great orchestras. But I think the other thing in terms of this sense of identity, and it's kind of been touched upon, is that you have to start thinking internationally. It's not, the world is shrinking. It's, these days it's so easy for people to access our work. We can access any other company on the planet's work with the click of a finger. It's so, and if we're not thinking internationally, I think we're actually missing the point really. But I think the thing that, and this is a proposition I want to lay down here in terms of the unique selling point, I think that Brisbane has the potential to be the arts centre of the country. I think if you look at what's gone on here in the last 3 weeks, we've had big sound, and let's not forget the impact on popular music that this city has had. If we go all the way back to the Saints and then keep coming, the popular music that's come out of this city is phenomenal. And then, so we've had Big Sound, we've had the Brisbane Writers' Festival, and we're in the midst of the Brisbane Festival, and we've had Romeo and Juliet open. There is an enormous amount of arts activity that goes on in this city. And there's the fact that the Brisbane City Council it takes up the entire city and the sort of funding that can go into that. I think there is the potential here for Brisbane to make a claim to be, the arts centre of the country, and that would be what I would propose being the unique selling point.
Lee, you wear many hats. One of them is, as far as being on the advisory board for the Committee of Brisbane, and I understand one of the charters of that organisation is to develop an arts and culture agenda for South East Queensland region. Why is it so important to have one of those agendas, and explain to me what would a good one look like?
Well, it is, as we all have said, I mean, arts is such a vital part of our society, but also is really how successful we are as a city, how happy we are. I think arts is a true reflection and a measurement of that. I think, if we want to have a most livable city, and have a most beautiful environment to live in, arts would have to be in the forefront of that. So at Committee for Brisbane, we really did some revisioning and we did some soul searching, but obviously there are, the forefront is trying to get the Olympics into the Southeast Queensland, and also some of the key infrastructure projects are high on the agenda to make not just Brisbane, but the whole, Southeast Queensland more, has that connectivity to be able to people come to QPAC, from other regional centres at such ease. But also, I think we identify arts truly will have to be in the forefront of that thinking. And I think that therefore, I think for me to imagine that artists and arts should be so highly valued and respected in our society, and also by the government, to be recognized as the important contribution arts makes to our general happiness of the society. And therefore, they are willing to invest to make this sector, really very, very vibrant. And to me, we all sitting here, no doubt we all say what should be look like is excellence, is world class, is, whatever you produce has to be thought-provoking, has to be beautiful, has to be absolutely stunningly, interesting. And I think that's what I think the shape of the sector should be: vibrant, beautiful, and challenging.
You mentioned the word invest there, and of course we have a room full of corporate Queenslanders with us here this afternoon. Most of you, I'm sure, would be inundated with requests for a sponsorship and the like every year, and for good causes as well. And no doubt you all have to make some very hard decisions on where you invest your shareholders and your investors' funds. I'd like to ask each of you now, let's for argument's sake, if someone approaches you after lunch today and says, okay, explain to me why I should be throwing some money your way, what would you tell them? John, let's start with you.
A huge centre like ours has lots of opportunities, so I think the most important thing for me is not to speak, but to listen and to find the key. What unlocks a partnership? Because really what we're after is not a short-term relationship, but a long-term relationship. So, Jonathan, I don't have a pithy answer. I think I've got a style.
Okay. Oh, this is going to be a great selling point here, isn't it? Craig, over to you. Good luck.
How do I follow that?
I don't know.
Look, I think it's a similar approach in style to John's. It really is. It's a matter of, first of all, you need to understand. I'd ask a question: what are your business objectives? Then I would outline some of the ideas that I'd have that for the Queensland Symphony Orchestra in order to meet those objectives. Then I'd hand over the phone number to the Managing Director of APLNG, who's been a supporter of the QSO for the last 8 years, who declare that their partnership with the Queensland Symphony Orchestra in Gladstone has been the most successful investment in partnerships in that space, and get them to reinforce the value of a partnership. And then I'd appeal to their enlightened self-interest and say, this is an opportunity for you to be a leader in making Brisbane a world city. Welcome.
Your turn for a bitch, Amanda.
Oh, well, why not? I might go out on a limb. I think that what is a fantastic thing about supporting a theatre company is you're actually involved with the company that is reflecting Queensland society back to itself right there in real time. So each year, half of our productions will be completely new works, and so they will be bringing to our community stories, interests, amusing things that are really of the moment and reflecting who and what we are. So, and we're a company that's making that work right here in the city. So it's a wonderful melting point of all those artists. And the works that we program will be really, next year we're doing a work called Prima Facie, which is a story of a barrister defending men who have been accused of sexual assault, and then she is assaulted and finds herself on the opposite side of the law. But what's happening in Queensland at the moment is that the sexual assault laws are being reviewed. So if you want to be involved in something that's really of the moment, then I think you should support theatre.
Patrick?
I don't agree. I would first of all, I guess, say to you that when you encounter opera, you encounter a feeling like you've never felt before. I had a conversation with the head of marketing for Microsoft in Southeast Asia recently, and he said to me, people don't remember facts, they remember feelings. And he said, and you're on a good wicket because you're essentially a feeling factory. And I would have to, obviously I wasn't going to disagree with him, but I suppose that the key thing about Opera Queensland is we take the idea of Queensland very seriously, and we have a regional program that is like no other in the country, and that's based upon the fact that we go and engage with communities directly, and we bring them into our productions. So when we create a show in Gladstone or Townsville or Cairns, the members of that community will come and they will sing in the chorus with us in the production. So next year we're taking Tosca to 7 different regional centres across the state. And that's a professional production, the same production that we presented here at QPAC earlier in the year, with professional singers and a chorus who are made up of members of the local community choirs in each of those centres that we'll visit. So that means that all of those people's family will come to see that show, but it also means that those people have the opportunity to engage with artists and professional singers in a way that they would never have the opportunity to do if we didn't tour. And that gives sponsors the opportunity to actually, if you were to take on sponsorship of that tour, you would get to access many thousands of regional Queenslanders. We've just done a show called Songs to Die For, which took the great death scenes of opera and mixed them with songs that were written by people from the singers and songwriters from the 27 Club, Amy Winehouse, Jim Morrison. And the whole principle of that was it was exploring how the experience of dying and the experience of singing a song about what you want to leave behind, be that Traviata or be that Amy Winehouse, it has the same relationship and the same connection to you as an audience, as a listener. And that production travelled to 18 different regional centres and played to full houses across the state. So yes, I would invite you to come and talk to us about connecting with all of Queensland.
Lee, how would Queensland Ballet engage with potential investors?
Well, we would like to think that a wonderful partnership that is with potential for long-term benefit has to be 1 + 1 = 3 or 4, not just 2. And you have to really understand each other's objectives. And so I think for us, we're really trying to understand what our corporate partners, what their key objectives are, and does that align with ours? Because that's going to be really the key factor for that lasting relationship. And I have to say, we've been lucky, we've been quite successful in working with our wonderful partners. And again, like Patrick said, that allowed us to really reach out to as many Queenslanders as possible. Next year, we're going to split the company into 2 to travel to 18 regional centres across Queensland, 18. So it's our big anniversary year, and each year we are very committed. This year we took the rather controversy, dangerous liaisons. You would thought that's a bit risky, and because typically you take family-friendly ballets, but I have to say we had an incredible success. Even the daring parents took their young children there, which I was horrified. Which we said adult only, but they didn't listen to us. But still, it was wonderful to see how Queenslanders in regional centres really connected. And like when we go on this to smaller and regional centres, farmers driving 4 or 5 hours in their trucks with their children to come each way, which is truly inspiring, and it's just reflecting that incredible hunger and thirst for beautiful, performances.
Chris, you've had the benefit of listening to everyone else. Do you steal their ideas, or have you got some of your own?
Look, if I meet a film production company member at the end of this lunch, I'm going to pitch arts company Shark Tank, because all of us have got to kind of get attention. That's the first thing we need to do. The second thing we need to do is to have a really persuasive and compelling case, as I think is obvious from what's been said. But in a way, the question assumes that you're going to sell this idea on this random meeting, and you rarely, if ever, do. They're the kind of freakish occurrences in some ways, the kind of lucky silver bullet moment. And I think where this happens most is when you're sitting with people or sharing an experience in the gallery with people, and they're, for whatever reason, moved by what it is that they've just heard or just seen or experienced at the gallery. And it's no different to the performing arts, and I stand here as the most static of you because you are all more or less engaged in movement. But I think the interesting thing is, if you're, like going back to John's early line, if you're passionate and optimistic and you believe deeply in the importance and the meaning of what you're doing, and you can persuade someone to just be open to listening to that, that's when the conversation really starts. But there's also someone else said, because whatever I said, someone else was going to say it, what you need to do is to really lean in closely and try and understand as much as you possibly can about what it is that drives that organisation. Now, like all of you, I'm sure, we don't admit it, but we do a tremendous amount of due diligence on the people that we're looking at partnering with. We don't want any surprises. They don't want any surprises. They generally know more about us than we know about them. So I think getting the rules of engagement clear from the beginning so that you're going in with a very open mind about what you think might be a good fit, and if you do that homework, you'll probably land something. And you might not land it immediately, but you might land it on the rebound a year or two later. And another little sort of pearl I think I have learned over the years about sponsorship is you bring them in well and you send them off well. Never, ever. It's like relationships, let me give you the tip. You never end a relationship badly. And the good thing about a sponsorship and a partnership, if you end it well, you just never know, they might return. And I've had them return over my career. They come back and think, look, we didn't think this was working, but we see what you're doing now and we kind of get it. So I think there's a bit of a takeout there as well, that you need to, get it right, get the fit right at the beginning, but just ensure that if it does, for whatever reason, economy, whatever, if it ends, make sure that you send them out on a high.
The arts sector, as you know, is renowned for its performances, its exhibitions, rather than construction, but some of you have recently completed or are about to undertake some capital works projects. Amanda, let's start with you. Tell us about what you're doing and what that is going to mean for your audiences.
So of the groups here, we're probably the most advanced. Our renovation project finished last October. So for those of you who don't know, we had an old black box studio we had a retractable seating bank in there. We just used to do sort of small shows in there. This is at our sort of headquarters at the corner of Montague and Maryvale Streets there in South Brisbane. And on that site, we have our big workshop department, wardrobe, administration, rehearsal facilities. So we decided that we wanted to renovate that space to make it into a different kind of a theatre space than Brisbane had previously had, and that is this corner stage configuration. So we have seats, 350 seats around three sides of the stage. So it's a very intimate space and really perfect for contemporary theatre because you really feel like every actor is speaking directly to you. So we're really pleased to give that other sort of theatre infrastructure into Brisbane because we also perform at QPAC, which we love. Our audiences love going to the Playhouse, the Cremorne, but we just wanted to add one more piece of sort of infrastructure there so we would have a great choice to match up the plays to the right kind of venue for them. And that was one reason, to make sure that every play is in its right space so it has the greatest opportunity to really connect with the audiences. I think the other thing we discovered is it's been a great way to really deepen the relationship with our audience. So sort of a bit like the difference between taking your friends out for dinner or having them over to your own house. I mean, when they come to our own venue, we're starting to get to know them much more. You know, our bar and cafe staff are getting to know them, the ushers are getting to know them more. We're really having a much deeper relationship with them. So we're very excited by that. The last chink in that bit of work is we have another smaller studio behind it, which we're just developing into an education centre. So that'll be the renovation that will take place at the end of this year. But it's been a wonderful, step for our theatre company. I hope it's the beginning of the kind of cultural infrastructure stretching out from Goma and coming up that sort of Montague Road into that, what's being called the Karupa precinct. So hopefully we're kind of at the forefront of the development of that area. Thank you.
John, QPAC is active in this space as well?
Yes, Jonathan. We're adding the next piece to the complex. We're building another theatre which will take about 1,500 people. It's the largest investment the state government has put into arts and arts infrastructure since the Millennium Project with Goma and the building of the State Library. It's going to be an amazing space. The early drawings are out. We're still in the period where we're refining the design as we go to schematic design. In the recent weeks, a managing contractor has been appointed, and we're working with the architects Blight, Rayner and Snowheader to refine the design and to put the final schematics together. Not only will it be a 1,500 seat theatre, it'll have multiple modes that allow it to come down in size and also grow in size. That's not a new concept. It's a concept that was built into the Lyric when it was first built. But one of the great opportunities that it will offer is that it will allow companies like Lee's and like Amanda to grow in size. I think there's a piece of the puzzle that's missing in terms of growth, and we need to talk about space. You know, when you look at a company like, I'll take a company that's not represented here, like Shake and Stir, you can see that they've grown out of a Cremorne theatre of 250 seats into the Playhouse. They're now playing at around 850 seats, and they've got an audience for that, and they will grow. The next size is about 1,500. To jump from the Playhouse into the Lyric, it's too big a space. While there are major productions that come to the city that require that space, you know, the likes of Mary Poppins or the likes of the big pieces of musical theatre, there are also multiple works around the world that actually work best in a slightly smaller space. And what this will offer us is the opportunity to actually have multiple things on, like we have now. Rather than 4 things on, we will have 5 things. And it's our aspiration that not only will it offer that, but it will also have the technology that will now allow us to connect live performance, every performance throughout the state. And if we can achieve that, that'll be an important addition. I'm not suggesting for one moment that digital performance will replace live performance, but what we've experienced with digital performance is that we can connect in a different and in an interesting way with audiences while we're still trying to provide the live experience.
Lee, Capital Works at Queensland Ballet, what are they and what will that mean for your audience?
Sure, John. I'm very excited about moving into our new home in the new theatre. Well, we're just about to embark on a very exciting phase of expansion and renovation at our old boot and shoe factory, Thomas Dixon Centre in West End. And give you an idea of what we're doing, we are moving out, we've just moved out a 2,000 square metre facility into a temporary of 4,000 square metres in the same area. That's going to be there for 2 years, we'll be there for 2 years. And it's really a beautiful space we moved into. And then when we move back after the 2-year renovation, which will cost us $62 million, will be 12,000 square metres. So this will no doubt will be the best dance facility in Australia, rival anything out there in the nation. One of the best in the Asia Pacific region. And then at the end of this year, we'll be completing a brand new academy as part of the Calvin Grove State College, and that's supported by the Queensland government, and under the Thomas Dixon Centre also supported by the Queensland government as well as the federal government. But the huge amount of money is come from private philanthropy and foundations, all really started by this transformational gift grant from a Melbourne-based foundation called the Ian Potter Foundation. So when the school is finished, it will be the best dance training facility in the nation. So when I talked earlier, we should be more confident about ourselves. And I'm very proud. As Amanda said, we'll really connect the dance communities in Queensland. So not just for us. So we'll serve as the center and magnet, attract talents, producing talent, developing talent, and will have such lasting impact going forward. And surprisingly, a lot of the private money is foundation and private philanthropy, not corporates. So I issue a challenge to corporates in the audience. If you're interested, come to talk to us.
Very, very exciting times. You must be thrilled. Look, at the start of the luncheon, we saw some amazing facts and figures, didn't we? I'll just recap them. More than 3.5 million attendees collectively between our institutions here represented this afternoon. More than 1,000 full-time staff. More than 2,300 performers and artists engaged as well, in delivering almost $300 million in economic value. I want to ask you all briefly, I'll give you a minute or so for your responses. They really are substantial figures. Chris, let's start with you. Are these the hard metrics that we should be using to measure our contribution and success?
Look, I think every one of us on this stage would agree that these numbers are fundamental. There's no way we can acquit against our performance for government investment where they're looking for public value, the best use of funds, getting the best value for the public return from those funds through the kind of programs we present and so on. But of course they're only a part of the picture. And I don't say that because you'd think, well, he would say that, it's the arts. The truth is that a lot of things in life can be measured. A lot of things in life. But sit in front of a sunset with 10 friends and try and measure how each of them feel in response and reaction to that moment of kind of apprehension of the beauty and the wonder of nature and whatever, and then translate that back into sitting in the auditorium and seeing a performance that moves you so deeply into the core of your soul that you didn't know you would ever go back again to the place it took you to. How on earth can you measure that? And it's not just this word subjective, because my colleagues know I hate the word subjective. I think that all of us, of course, make objective and subjective decisions about the way in which we live in and work in and respond to the things around us in the world. But if all we do is rely on an economic accounting of art experience, we are simply, utterly and entirely missing the point of what art experiences are here to provide to us, to furnish us with that full and flourishing life I mentioned earlier, to furnish us with those places it takes us to or returns us to that we could never have imagined we would otherwise, have experienced without the catalytic effect of that art moment. So by all means measure, by all means acquit, but don't forget there's judgment, there's beauty, there's all sorts of incalculable other things that attach to the experience of the work of art.
I have a suspicion this is going to be like question one. We'll get a very similar response. Craig?
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree. For me, it's about what the impact is of the arts, and I think about, and I'm recently, in my role prior to the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, I spent 10 years as Chief Executive of the West Australian Symphony Orchestra, and there we developed a program inspired by the El Sistema program, which was developed in Venezuela, where we're in a couple of communities, or a community about 45 minutes drive south of Perth, one of the most at-risk communities in the country, not just in Perth or Western Australia, but in the country. No music education, and starting a music education program in those two schools. When I left, we'd finished the 4th year of that program, so the first lot of kids had gone through the NAPLAN. First lot of pre-primary up to year 3, gone through NAPLAN. It was the best result not only that the school had ever achieved, but the best result in the district. And you see that you talk to the teachers, you talk to the students, you talk to the parents, and you see the pride, you see the joy, you see the sense that this generation of young people in this very difficult environment actually have a real chance, that they are going to school where previously they weren't, and are begging mum and dad to take them to school early so that they can play with the instruments. That's the sort of stuff that you can't measure, but is fundamentally going to change those children's lives for the better, and we will all have a story very similar to that, where what we do, yes, it hits metrics, but most importantly, it changes lives. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and I'm sure my colleagues as well.
I still talk about my clarinet days. My parents probably don't, but that's very good. Amanda, how do we assess the contributions of theatre?
Very hard. I'm in furious agreement, obviously, with Chris and Craig. Our mission as a theatre company is to create collective experiences that change lives. I truly believe that can happen, but it's again, as Chris was saying, how do you measure that moment where you come out of the theatre and you're just so moved and it's in your mind for days afterwards? thinking about it, thinking about your own views about things. That just how to measure that is so difficult. It's, you know, something I've been measuring with, you know, wrestling with my whole career. What is the best way to measure that sort of intangible in the arts? But one thing we are embarking on for our 50th anniversary next year is very much looking at that social connector of the arts. So we're going to be going out to all of our audience members and talking to them about their experiences of coming to the theatre. And in a bit of a lowering way, sometimes it's not even about us so much as about the people that they've come with for the last 35 or 40 years. We do have people that have been subscribing to the company for that long. And so I think that might be a little bit to unlocking that key as well, that, you know, what it means to those people to come together and what they've taken away from it. So very much that sort of drilling down to the granular and the anecdotal stories. I think that's where a lot more richness will be than necessarily how much did you spend on transport, how much did you spend in the restaurant before you saw the show, or that kind of metric.
Patrick, opera isn't built on numbers either, is it?
No, it certainly isn't, although you have to keep time, which is, you have to follow the time signature. I just want to ask a quick question. Who here has seen Cats? Yeah, quite significant, the majority of the room. So when the night before Cats opened in the West End, Andrew Lloyd Webber had taken out a double mortgage on his house to allow it to happen, and had also put an ad in the paper what was effectively a very early form of crowdfunding, asking for investors, because every major producer in the West End said that a musical about a bunch of cats based on some poems wasn't going to work. Seriously. But Andrew Lloyd Webber did it, and in 2012, that musical had taken $3.5 billion. And the investors in that original production, it is estimated they have made 3,500% on their original investment. I'm talking numbers when everyone's talking about feelings and how wonderful the feelings are about the arts. But the reason I'm talking numbers is because that story tells us how important it is to take a risk. And what Andrew Lloyd Webber did in doing that, and the other producers around him, McIntosh and Tim Rice, I think, and there's a whole group of them. They were willing to put their own money and their and risk their own reputations on the fact that they believed that this was a work of art that was going to change lives and transform the people who had seen it. And obviously it speaks for itself. And I think where we have to be careful when we are, yes, hard data is important, and the way in which we measure these things is very important. But to create good art, you often have to forget about the numbers and actually take a leap into the abyss. And I think it's really important that we don't forget that.
John, would you like to follow up?
Sure. How can I disagree? But perhaps another way of asking is, if we asked our 3 million attendances or our audiences, can they imagine that we didn't exist? And that would probably give us a better understanding of our importance.
And Lee?
In risk of repeating, I agree with them all. But I think the one point I would like to make is, I think even those numbers alone you have demonstrated is quite impressive enough. I think if that's the bottom line figure, that's the easy to measure figures, and then on top of what everybody else was saying, and earlier I mentioned about arts makes people happy. And it plays a really vital part. It really breaks down barriers for people and bring people together. All of that, how it's difficult to put a value to it. So I think in some ways, I wish there is a way we can come up with some kind of methodology to measure the other hard to measure part of it. And therefore, I think perhaps it's easier to present to corporates or government agencies or philanthropists say, here is the true value. May not be 100% accurate, but probably close to it. So I think there almost needs to be two parts to that equation.
Okay, I'm told the Queensland Media Club does a really good job of keeping these functions on time, so we're doing pretty well. We're still going to try and wrap this up in about 15 minutes or so. A couple of other questions though that I would like to ask, and we'll keep our our answers reasonably tight. And to all of you, look, we all know South Bank has the greatest concentration of arts and cultural institutions in Australia. We're all just, what, a couple of minutes away from each other, aren't we? So I'm interested to know, honestly, do you patronise each other's venues? And when I mean patronise, do we really, really support each other? John, over to you.
Oh, yes. It's very easy, you know, like one of the fantastic things, I've just recently closed 30 years at QPAC, and one of the best places for me to think is in the art gallery and the museum, and I often conduct meetings in those spaces, so yes.
Lee?
Oh, definitely. I have huge respect and admiration for other art forms, and I get huge inspiration from them when I go. And it's just trying to peel myself away to find the time to go to a lot of the invitations to their fabulous shows or exhibitions is the challenge for me.
Amanda, I see you nodding along there as well, because it's really important. You not only engage with each other, but you're also learning all the time, aren't you?
Absolutely, and I think, you know, it might come as a huge surprise to people in the audience to know that we are not necessarily highly paid. So I think we're all working in the arts because we absolutely love it. We love our own work, but we love to see what everyone else is doing. But just to also add on to something that John said, I mean, we're all sort of the major companies sitting up here in front of you, but it is so important for us all to get out to support those small to medium companies, because they're absolutely the growth area and the generator of the success of the arts in our community. That's where the new artists are coming from, the new ideas and the new work. So I try to get out to as much of the small to medium work as I can as well.
I was in this room only on Saturday at the Media Awards. I can tell you, media aren't so friendly. Chris?
Look, I think like everyone, there's a lot of demand made on our time, just doing the jobs that we do, and a lot of that is kind of out of hours type things. But I think wherever we can, we try and support each other, and it's very generous that as colleagues we almost all invite each other to the various activities and performances and events that we run, and it really is gratifying when you see one of these and similar colleagues across the room taking the time out of their busy schedules to be part of what you're doing. And I think one of the ways, because I can't go to all 1,900 of them in Barton Slide, I missed a few this year, but I think one of the ways I try and deal with this problem is when the opportunity is given to us to speak about our organisations, particularly on South Bank, because we're a pretty joined up lot there for obvious reasons. I really try and make the effort to be as inclusive as I can, and if John's in the room, I'll be giving a shout out to QPAC, or I'll be trying to sort of remind people that we are very, very blessed to live in what I think is an incredibly joined up and incredibly collegial arts community here. And I've worked and lived in other communities where I wouldn't have waxed quite so lyrical, you know, about how we get together and how we work together. But I think in Brisbane, if we really, you know, we had a terrific experience with Gerhard Richter about 2 years ago, with Patrick. It was fantastic. And the people that had that experience looked at that work and experienced that work in a way like none other that came through the show. So I think every time we can find these opportunities to work together, we should grab them.
Craig, collaboration seems to be a theme.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, 13 years ago, I was a general manager of the White Theatre Company, small to medium sector, and then, like now, there was so much connection and involvement, regularly getting together for lunch, sharing ideas, sharing. It was almost like a self-help group. Hi, my name's Craig. I'm an arts administrator. And look, I really tried to take that to Perth for 13 years when I was there to try to build that same kind of relationship that I experienced here. Wonderful to be back in my hometown and to see that camaraderie is still there and very much a part of it. What we do at the Queensland Symphony Orchestra is really partly what we do is enable what happens on this stage, all except for the theatre company. As Patrick said before, they can't do their performances without the Queensland Symphony Orchestra. Same for the Queensland Ballet. We work very closely with QPAC. We need to work more with the art gallery. We'll have a chat later. But it really is for us. It's about if we have a strong, vibrant, successful arts sector, then we all win. So I don't view us as competitors. If we all are successful and we support each other to be successful, then we will all be successful. So I think that is the state of mind that we've always had here in Queensland. As Chris said, not always the case in other places, but it is unique about Queensland. We need to maintain that. We need to continue to work together, continue to build the pie for the small to medium sector, so that we have this extraordinary arts ecosystem here in Brisbane, which sustains us as a world city.
And Patrick?
I can only agree with everything that's been said.
Yep.
We're about to collaborate with Circa, one of Brisbane's great arts organisations, to present an opera, which we're calling a circus opera. So the 8 of Circus acrobats are going to be part of this production, which you're on. The artistic director is directing. We're collaborating with Le Bois, developing a new musical. We're collaborating with QPAC and some members of the Torres Strait Island community to develop a new musical, an opera based on a story that's come out of the Torres Strait. So all of these connections and relationships are, as you say, about building a stronger culture. And, I think we all get that. We understand that.
Okay, and finally, one last wrap-up question from me to each of you. We'll keep the answer relatively short again. Look, across all of the attributes, the challenges, opportunities, what should Brisbane really be aspiring to in this sphere? Amanda, let's start with you.
For me, I think it's all about the quality. I think we just really have to have that at the forefront of our minds all the time. But my big dream or aspiration, if you like, would be that, Brisbane could be known as the place where your idea gets up. So if you're living here and you've got this fantastic idea for work, or if you're anywhere in Australia or the world, you look at Brisbane and say, oh my God, if I go there, I know the infrastructure, the support will be there, and my idea and fantastic work will get up.
Patrick, what should Brisbane be famous for?
I'm going to return to the idea of it being the city of the arts. I really do think that there is great potential here for Brisbane to be the centre of arts in this region, not only in this country but in this entire region. I think that because of the council and because of, if the industry also gets behind it, there is extraordinary possibilities there.
Craig, your final thoughts?
Look, I just want to. I'll dig down a little bit deeper from
Please.
the arts and say music. I think that's because we still have the best music education program in the country. With the Griffith Conservatorium and University of Queensland Music School, we have the 2 best music schools, tertiary music schools in the country. We have a world-class orchestra, and as Patrick mentioned earlier, we have an extraordinary history of bringing contemporary artists to the fore. Think Bee Gees, think the Saints, the Go-Betweens, Savage Garden, Mallrat coming through now. There is extraordinary number of artists that are coming through, right through. It is something that we can define ourselves with as Sydney battles with its lockout laws and the diminishing of its place as a music capital. I think that Queensland can really step up.
Lee?
I would like to think that Brisbane, Queensland should be a desirable cultural arts destination. I think that's fit into, have really the arts capital in this Asia Pacific region. I think we definitely have the capacity, the possibility, and the potential to be that. And I think it's all coming down to really partly to do the talent, the culture of the cultural ecology you create in the community. With depth of talents, but also with a really good funding support. Because wonderful ideas, you can have that, but without money in arts, you really can't get very far.
You also can't get far with passion and leadership, and I think it's been on display in droves here today. And your thoughts, Chris?
Oh, mine.
Yeah.
Well, I think that in some ways we're already famous for it. I think that it's completely, I accept that every one of us wants to be better at what we do. We want to bring more and better program to the city. We want to create opportunities for the people of Brisbane and of Queensland to experience art forms at their best, and I think we all are striving for that. But when I travel overseas, which of course I never do, because it's really dangerous to travel overseas. But when I come back, I'm reminded that what did people ask me about? They don't really ask me about Quagoma. They don't really know about it. They don't really know about Brisbane, but they know about the role we play in the Asia-Pacific region. They really understand that. It's the first thing generally. People will ask me, when is the next APT on. And that's kind of an echo of what Patrick was saying about we do have a major role in the region already. That exhibition started in '93. The Asia Pacific City Summit started in 1996, and in 2007 the Asia Pacific Screen Awards started. So we've already marked a niche out as an Asia Pacific city, a city that brings, if you like, the west to the east, and it certainly links this city with the Pacific in the way that almost no other city excepting Auckland perhaps does. So I think we've got a fantastic point of difference already, and so I think for any one of us it's a case of taking that point of difference and really leveraging it to make it grow even further and not try and be everything to everyone.
And John, finally, what should Brisbane aspire to be famous for, my friend?
I would love it if every Queenslander had a regular arts experience.
Perfect, sums it up very well. As was mentioned off the top, our media involvement today was limited because of the bushfires and everyone being sent off to do their various reporting. We do have a couple of journalists in the room though. Any questions from you?
Hi.
Just please introduce yourself for us.
My name is Paula Shearer. I'm from Quest Newspapers.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to see all of you here on a panel together. I think it was mentioned for the first time. Is there a plan to make this a regular occurrence? Is it a plan to formalise what you're doing, which you've already been doing in an informal way?
A quick answer, I think we talk a lot and we talk regularly. And yes, it's true we're not on a public panel like this very often, but there are other members of this panel I've been on in other panel settings previously. I think that might be true of all of us really. So I think that because there is good, trusting, open conversation between us and between the companies we represent, I hope that that's fostered regardless. But yeah, I think we'd all love to do this annually, but but I think that's kind of how it works practically.
Yes, I hope so. And I think if Committee for Brisbane have its way, we probably will have this as a regular event.
And there is in Western Australia, there's a Chamber of Arts and Culture, and there is a fledgling organisation that's being developed to I guess, be a voice for the sector, and not just the people on this stage, but also the small to medium and independent artists. I think that would be a good thing.
I will get into trouble if we run too far over time, so one or two more questions if there are some. We'll have some quick responses, or is that it? Okay, there you go. I might get invited back. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank our 6 guest speakers. Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure, thank you. I'll just quickly wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, please also visit the Queensland Media Club website for a visual recording of today's speech, proudly sponsored and powered by JPL Media. Once again, like to acknowledge our naming rights sponsors, Brisbane Airport Corporation, Dial Before You Dig and Griffith University, as well as our other sponsors. Can we have a collective round of applause for them? And of course, if you'd like any other information about the Queensland Media Club season, I did see a bowl out the front, so please pop your business card in there and we will keep you up to date with everything that is going on in the Queensland Media Club. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attendance, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and be watching Channel 9 tonight. Thank you very much.
Running blind, following your feet to try and outrun your fate, standing in a field of flowers, cerebral voice is the loudest, or hollering your name.